Hello and welcome to my channel. My name is Phoebe and I own a business called Phoebe's Custom Tailoring. I specialise in alterations, repairs, custom made clothing, curtains, furnishings. Here I'll be sharing my journey as a seamstress and talking about my business and hopefully inspiring all of you to sew. I'm trying to grow my business. I've got a good customer basis. I've been doing this since 2022, so it's been about 3 years. I've got my own studio. I've got a lot of things to show you. I've always got stuff on. By the time I am filming this, it is Wednesday. It's near to the end of the week, so I thought this would be the only time to really try and film something to introduce myself, my channel, why I'm here, what I'm doing. So my aim for this channel is to create a safe space for people to learn how to sew. I'm not necessarily going to be teaching, but I'd love to show you an insight in different techniques. This week has been so much fun and it's been extremely busy. Last week I was working at my local theatre as a dresser for Matthew Bourne's Swan Lake, so that was a bit different. I delve into a little bit of theatre work here and there when I can. Predominantly I'm a costume maker. I trained in costume construction at South Essex College in association with the Royal Opera House. That was a 3-year degree. I got to work at Butlins as a wardrobe assistant, and that was only for the summer. And then after that, my work kind of deteriorated because the whole industry was crumbling, and then COVID kind of happened. And then I moved back home. At the time I was working alongside a lady who lives locally to me, and she works for a lot of theatres and films, and she's a big maker in the costume industry. But a few Christmases ago she had to let me go. I'm extremely grateful for everything that I did with her and the experience that I gained. You know, I got to go to London, I got to do lots of fittings, I got to see some shows, and you know, just meeting so many industry professionals and experts. I've also worked for a costume hire company, but alongside that I then started Phoebe's Custom Tailoring. And then the two sides just, it wasn't weighing up for me. And then ultimately I decided to leave them and endeavour on this journey on my own. But I do really enjoy it. I love having my own work hours, and I'm starting to really build up a good experience of being a seamstress, you know, an everyday seamstress. So yeah, it's really exciting. So I've done a lot of alterations recently. I've repaired a few jumpers, I've been doing some dresses, I've also been hemming a lot of things. So my first job of the day is altering this jumper. It's a high neck, so what he wanted was just me to take it off completely or just turn it under, so we've got a shorter neck, which is what I'm doing. Turning it under, and then I'm just going to stitch it down, really simple. And because it's got a zip, I've unpicked the zip from it, and then I've just tucked it back under. I'm going to just stitch that in place. That's, you know, it's quite a simple one to start off my day. Now what I'm going to do is a technique called stitching in the ditch. This is typically where you stitch in between a seam. So for this one it's a bit more difficult because it's a knitted jumper, but I'm going to try and hide my stitch line just along this seam here. That line will show up on the inside, but because it's on the inside that will be fine. Let's take it to the machine. We have it, one jumper done and altered, my first job of the day. That's all done, and if we do it up I can show you, and hopefully everything is even and matches and looks great. There we go, lovely. And I'll show you the inside. So these are all sewn down. The zip can go past it all, because that's typically how zips can break. I get a lot of people come to me with broken zips or zips that are trapped in the lining. So every time I do a zip or work with a zip, I'm always making sure that everything is working, the zip is functional, nothing's getting caught. and it's easy breezy. So I've got one more jumper to do and exactly the same alteration that needs to be done.
To anyone who doesn't tidy up after themselves like me. For example, look at that, I've obviously had a cup of tea on there, which is naughty. I shouldn't really be having cups of tea near my sewing machine. And pins, so I need to clear this up now, ready for my next job. My pet peeve is when pins get stuck in this little groove here. And basically under my machine is the oil. All those pins can go seeping down there and get stuck in this tank, so it's very important for my machine especially to keep pins and everything away. So when I put pins in the middle, I should be telling myself off for that.
So next job of the day is this child's coat. The zip's not doing up and there's some teeth missing. I thought the best thing for this coat is just to replace the zip entirely. So what I'm gonna have to do here is unpick the front side, and obviously there's a lining and the same on the other side. So my first thing to do for this is measure up the zip and find its replacement. I was just checking obviously that I have the correct length zip. Now I can actually put the new zip in.
I'm constantly unpicking all these little threads that I left behind. I still have left a few, but this is the thing, when I'm now going to pin the zip in, I've got to make sure that all these little bits and pieces are all gone. Getting caught in the machine, it doesn't necessarily hurt the machine, but it just gets in the way.
I'm now gonna just unpick this next zip. I made sure to label my new zip left and right, just for my own little brain. And obviously if you don't know which side the zip is on, you can always tell from the old zip. So the left zip, which is the actual zip is on, will go on this side, and then the right zip. So making sure everything's labelled. I'm working on this dress at the moment, and this customer wants me to take up the hem by 3 inches. So what I initially did at the start of this job was mark where the 3-inch point was, and then I marked 2.5 inches. So my 2.5 line is here, and what I did, I ironed it, and then I sewed a small stitch line along the fold. Now this stitch line helps me navigate what to do next. So then I took it back to the iron and folded the fabric up again, but when I folded it, I tried to match the existing hemline. Hello, voiceover Phoebe here. Here in this clip, I'm cutting off the excess fabric, which is not needed anymore, before sewing my finished hem. I'm using the lines which have been ironed out as a guide to cut, and this hem is called a rolled hem. This is actually the next day, but when I held up this dress after finishing the previous day, I noticed the lining was too long, so here I'm just hemming it with my overlocker and sewing machine for a simple hem. The alterations that I'm going to be doing today for this dress will be taking in the back neckline and then fading it down halfway towards the waist. It was gaping literally like that on the customer's back, so I just pulled in the fabric and then tapered it down to complement her back. The customer then tried to get it off because it was pinned like this and she struggled. So I was like, okay, that's not going to be good if we do this alteration and you can't get the dress on and off. So what I suggested was putting in a zip. I think we're going to go for a zip that goes down 3/4 of the way down this back of the bodice. That way I don't have to then go into the waist seam and mess with the gathering. That was the only placement I could think of other than having a zip down the side seam. And the next thing that the customer wanted doing was taking in the side seams, and then the next job was the hem. So I've put some safety pins in the hem of the length she wants it to be. So yeah, that's what needs to be done to this dress. This was another Mary Benson dress I altered. I altered the side seams, the waist seam, and I also adjusted the neckline shape. I also added some back darts to reduce gaping and hemmed the skirt. Here I have a dress and it's actually entirely made out of bandana squares, which is pretty cool. I might have to fashion one for myself, but the customer who's brought it to me wanted to see if it could be made into a top and a skirt. For a skirt I at least need some sort of waistband, so there was an option of taking the hem of the skirt and using that as a waistband, but because she quite likes the length, and also taking, you know, a bit of the hem would then make the squares uneven. So we want to keep as much as we can of the skirt. So what I suggested was making the top slightly shorter. No, we could shorten it slightly more, and then where the safety pin is there, that's where the new waistband for the skirt can be. I'll cut that, separate it from the skirt, hem the top so we've still got a top, and then all I'll do is I'll face off the inside of the waistband. She wants to add belt loops, and then that will be a skirt and a top. I can take fabric out of the pockets for belt loops for the waistband of the skirt, and then I'll replace the pockets with some cotton. And I'll also use a cotton fabric, probably white, to face off the inside of the waistband. I'm just gonna measure where that pin is. So it's about 2 inches, give or take. I'm trying not to cut too much off of the top half, because then there's no point in having it as a top anymore. I just wanted to add, if there's any discrepancies in these videos or outfit changes, it's because alongside all my jobs that I have to do. I have multiple appointments and fittings and meetings with all my customers, as well as having to do all my business admin that comes with owning a small business. I'm now going to start work on the skirt. I also have a roll of cotton fabric, and it's very similar to the thickness of the bandana. And I also forgot to mention that I've got a tiny little zipper. This is the front, I'm going to put it at the centre of the back and try and hide it nicely in the pleats so the customer can get the skirt on and off. I'm now going to measure the waistband. That measures 17 inches, which is 34-inch waistband. So now I've got that in mind, I know how much fabric to cut. And I also know that is 2 inches deep. So I've just finished inserting, if I can find it, my pocket. There we go. That looks pretty good, doesn't it? And when I iron it down, should be invisible until you put your hand in. So that's quite exciting. Just ironed my pockets down, and I've also pressed the seam flat, so when the skirt is worn, the pockets hopefully are concealed. So now I've got to finish off the waistband and add the belt loops, because at the moment it's raw fabric and it's just a single layer, and that's not gonna last for long without facing. altering this dress, which is now a skirt. I think it's adorable. Isn't this so cool, with like a western belt and some cowboy boots? If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up, a little red button down to subscribe, and that will notify you every time that I post. Please comment below what you'd like to see more of. If you'd like me to talk about anything else, you can find me on my social medias at Phoebe's Custom Tailoring on Instagram and Facebook. And thank you so much for watching.